we remembered what God saved us from, we'd stop running back to it. Hi, friends. How do you know what the Old Testament really means? In this series, I'm showing you how the Old and New Covenants fit together like a divine puzzle, each piece revealing Jesus, his character, and his covenant with us. Today, we're looking at Deuteronomy 5-7. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verses 12 to 15 says, "Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, as the Lord your God has commanded you. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters, your male and female servants, your oxen and donkeys and other livestock, and any foreigners living among you. All your male and female servants must rest as you do. Remember that you were once slaves in Egypt, but the Lord your God brought you out with his strong hand and powerful arm. That is why the Lord your God has commanded you to rest on the Sabbath." In this chapter, Moses reiterated the importance of honoring the Sabbath in order to remember that God brought them out of slavery. You know, I make every effort to honor the Sabbath in my life, but this really caused me to ponder. How much time do I spend reflecting on the fact that God has delivered me out of slavery to sin? It might help us to not be as quick to fall into sin if we regularly reflect on how God took us out of that hardship. This leads to chapter 6, verses 6-9, where God charges his people to commit wholeheartedly to the commands he gives, repeating them to our children, at home, on the road, when we're going to bed, and when we're getting up. In other words, the commands of God are in my life and form the rhythm of my life. The question I have to ask from this then is, how much time do I spend talking to others about the commands of God? I do have verses up all over my house, but those are mostly promises. God is saying to constantly think, talk about, and teach our children and write on our houses his commands. Again, I really think this would help keep us from sin. Interestingly, the charge concerning God's commands follows 2 verses known as the Shema. Those verses are worth a read for us. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4-5. "Listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. And you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength." So the force that feeds our commitment to God's commands is, first of all, listening to him. Then acknowledging that he is Lord and Lord alone. If we don't have a revelation of this, why would we listen to him? Why would we obey him? If he isn't Lord, then who is he to expect us to listen to and obey him? Lastly, love God with all of our heart, all our soul and strength. Jesus brought the law of love directly into the new covenant, declaring the Shema to be the most important of all commandments. Then he took it one step further, as Jesus often does. The great thing about God is that he doesn't arbitrarily order us around so he can feel big. He actually does it so that he has room to show us unfailing love. God's commands to us, which chapter 7 defines as living in holiness, are a privilege, not a burden. It's important to follow them so that we stay out of sin. And that is important because God has delivered us from it. In chapter 6, verse 7, it explains it further. For you are a holy people who belong to the Lord your God. Of all the people on the earth, God has chosen you to be his own special treasure. The Message paraphrase says that we are God's cherished personal treasure. This made me think, if I'm working on something or in something dirty or messy, I take off my jewelry so that nothing happens to it. And then I don't just throw it anywhere. I keep it safe and clean in a special box. God has saved us from the disgustingness of sin. He treasured us. We ought to take care of God's treasure, that's us, by avoiding what he paid with his life to get us out of. The link is in Matthew 22, 36 to 39. Teacher, which is the most important commandment in the law of Moses? Jesus replied, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. A second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. That's all for today. I've placed additional scriptures for you in the description of this video if you want to go further. Until next time, I'll be praying that you get a revelation of God's covenant with you. Have a blessed